District 9 begins not like a normal sci-fi movie, but like a disturbing documentary pulled from real-world history. News reporters, government officials, and ordinary citizens speak directly to the camera as they recall the day humanity made first contact with extraterrestrial life. In 1982, a gigantic alien mothership mysteriously appears above Johannesburg, South Africa. At first, the world panics, expecting an invasion or attack. But the ship simply hangs motionless in the sky for months. No communication, no weapons, no movement. Eventually, humans force their way inside the ship and discover something shocking. Over 1 million starving, weak and sickly alien creatures packed tightly together in horrifying conditions. The aliens are insect-like beings that humans later insultingly nickname prawns because of their appearance. Rather than arriving as conquerors, these aliens seem more like abandoned refugees. At first, humans attempt to help them. The aliens are brought down from the ship and placed into a temporary refugee camp called District 9. But as years pass, sympathy slowly turns into fear, hatred, and disgust. The aliens become trapped in poverty and isolation, while tensions between humans and prawns grow worse every year. 28 years later, District 9 has transformed into a filthy militarized slum filled with violence, crime, and exploitation. Humans see the aliens as dangerous parasites stealing resources from society. The government decides to relocate all the prawns to a new camp far outside the city called District 10. The relocation operation is handed over to a powerful private military corporation called Multinational United, or MNU. The man chosen to lead the eviction is a nervous and awkward bureaucrat named Wikus van der Merwe. Wikus is neither a soldier nor a hero. He's a clueless office worker who landed the position mainly because his father-in-law is one of the executives behind Multinational United. Soon, the operation begins to take shape. Armed mercenaries prepare their weapons and ammunition for a possible confrontation, while heavily armored trucks roll toward District 9. Above them, military helicopters circle the sky, some equipped with deadly sniper teams, turning the entire mission into something that feels more like a war zone than a relocation effort. At first, Wikus treats the assignment almost like a publicity stunt. He smiles awkwardly during interviews and proudly shows off his new authority, completely unaware of the nightmare waiting ahead. Before long, escorted by heavily armed mercenaries, Wikus enters District 9 to force the aliens to sign eviction notices. But the operation quickly reveals its horrifying reality. Homes are raided with brutal force, alien eggs are burned alive without mercy, and the prawns are treated less like living beings and more like filthy animals. The deeper Wikus steps into the district, the darker and more disturbing the situation becomes. Meanwhile, an intelligent alien named Christopher Johnson, along with his young son and another prawn named Paul, searches through massive garbage dumps for scattered pieces of alien technology. For nearly 20 years, Christopher has secretly been collecting these fragments, patiently working toward a hidden goal. Back at their shack, Christopher and Paul carefully extract a strange black liquid from one of the devices recovered by Christopher's son. But before they can continue, Wikus suddenly arrives at the house to force them into signing the eviction papers. Sensing danger, Christopher Johnson secretly hands the metal canister to Paul and tells him to hide it safely. Moments later, Christopher slips out through the back of the shack, while Paul steps outside and is immediately restrained by the armed mercenaries. Inside the house, Wikus arrogantly boasts that they are probably hiding illegal weapons. He begins tearing through the shack in search of evidence until he eventually discovers a hidden door. The moment he steps inside, he stumbles upon an ongoing alien experiment. Unknown to Wikus, Christopher has spent years rebuilding alien technology in secret, preparing for something far greater than anyone realizes. As the search continues, Wikus discovers a mysterious metal canister filled with the black liquid. Curious and careless, he examines it too closely and accidentally sprays the substance directly into his face. He coughs violently, clearly shaken, but brushes it off as nothing serious and continues the operation. Shortly afterward, Wikus enters another room packed with both human and alien weapons. Amazed by the discovery, he proudly declares it the biggest find of his career, before immediately calling for backup. Tension quickly erupts outside. Wikus threatens Paul with criminal charges, but Paul suddenly fights back, easily disarming one of the mercenaries before hurling Wickus aside. Seconds later, a backup helicopter arrives overhead and opens fire without warning. Then, from the helicopter, emerges the brutal mercenary leader, Kubus Venter. Paul desperately pleads for his life, but Kubus mercilessly executes him without hesitation, exposing the true cruelty of MNU. At the same time, medics wrap Wickus's severely burned hand. Though visibly disoriented and wounded, Wickus stubbornly chooses to continue the operation the moment his treatment is finished. As the operation continues, the team eventually arrives at the house of Christopher Johnson. Wickus orders Christopher to sign the eviction notice, but Christopher refuses to cooperate. Growing impatient, Wickus threatens to send Christopher's son to child services if he does not comply. Moments later, Wickus enters the shack and discovers walls covered with strange computers and alien equipment, immediately becoming suspicious of Christopher's activities. But while searching the house, Wickus suddenly begins feeling worse. Without warning, he violently vomits, forcing the team to end the operation for the day and return the next morning. While heading back, Wickus insists on stopping for food before returning home. He stuffs himself with food and briefly starts feeling better, but a strange black liquid soon begins leaking from his nose. Disturbed but still in denial, Wickus ignores the symptoms and heads back to the office. However, his condition rapidly worsens. His fingernails begin falling off one by one, and his body grows weaker by the minute. That night, when Wickus arrives home, he is greeted by a surprise celebration for his promotion. Friends and family gather around him, completely unaware of the horror unfolding inside his body. Then, while cutting his cake, Wickus suddenly collapses onto the floor in front of everyone. Soon after, Wickus is rushed to the hospital, but the moment doctors remove the bandages from his injured hand, they uncover something terrifying. His left arm has begun transforming into an alien limb. Panicked, the doctors initially believe it to be some kind of deadly virus. The entire ward is immediately evacuated, and armed military forces storm the hospital before forcibly sealing Wickus inside a body bag and taking him away. Before long, MNU secretly transfers Wickus to a heavily restricted underground laboratory. There, scientists perform countless tests on his body in an attempt to understand the mutation. They also recover the mysterious canister containing the black liquid that infected him. But during one of the transfers between testing rooms, Wickus accidentally discovers a horrifying truth. Hidden deep within the facility, MNU has been conducting brutal illegal experiments on captured aliens for years. Alien bodies are dissected, tortured, and experimented on as researchers desperately try to unlock the secrets behind their advanced biotechnology. The scientists soon discover that Wickus van der Merwe's DNA is slowly merging with alien genetics. The mutation gives him the ability to operate alien weapons. Meanwhile, Wickus's father-in-law watches from behind the glass as multinational United Forces him into a series of brutal weapons tests. At first, they use pigs as targets, but before long, they bring in a terrified live alien. Wickus is horrified as the scientists manipulate him into killing helpless prawns using alien weaponry. Instead of trying to save him, MNU sees Wickus as a priceless scientific breakthrough. To them, he is no longer a human being, only a living key to unlocking alien biotechnology. Once the executives realize his transformation is progressing rapidly, they decide to harvest his organs before he fully turns into an alien. Desperate and terrified, Wickus pleads with his father-in-law for help. But even he shows no concern for Wickus' life, caring only about the success of the experiment and the profits it could bring. Then, just as the doctors prepare to dissect him alive, Wickus suddenly fights back. In a desperate struggle for survival, he violently attacks everyone in the laboratory, smashing through doctors and security personnel as chaos erupts throughout the facility. Against all odds, Wickus manages to escape. Desperate for help, he tries contacting his friends and co-workers, but no one is willing to stand beside him. Soon after, MNU launches a massive propaganda campaign against him, flooding the media with fake reports claiming Wickus contracted an alien disease through disgusting sexual acts with extraterrestrials. Almost overnight, Wickus loses everything. With nowhere else to run, Wickus is forced to hide inside District 9 itself, the very place he once helped terrorize. 40 hours after his exposure, Wikus van der Merwe wakes up weak and starving, searching for food. But while eating, his teeth suddenly begin falling out one by one. The mutation continues spreading across his body, slowly stripping away his humanity. Soon after, his wife Tanya van der Merwe calls and tells him their relationship is over. Wikus desperately tries to explain what is happening to him, but she refuses to listen and abruptly hangs up. Overwhelmed and terrified, Wikus steals an axe from a nearby vendor and cuts off one of his mutated fingers. He is about to do it again when helicopters suddenly appear overhead. He quickly hides inside a nearby shack, where he reunites with Christopher Johnson. Christopher finally reveals that the black liquid is actually a rare fuel source needed to power a hidden alien dropship buried beneath his home. If he can reach the mothership above Johannesburg, he may eventually return home and cure Wikus using advanced alien technology. But there's a problem. MNU confiscated the canister after capturing Wikus. Desperate, Wikus suggests finding more fuel, but Christopher explains it took him 20 years to collect enough liquid to fill that single canister. Later that night, as Wikus begins losing hope, Tanya calls again. This time, she listens to him and promises she will wait for his return. But unknown to them, the police are secretly tracing the call and quickly discover Wikus's exact location. Realizing time is running out, Wikus finally forms an uneasy partnership with Christopher Johnson. Together, they plan to infiltrate Multinational United and recover the stolen black fluid. But to do that, they need weapons. Meanwhile, desperate for weapons, Wikus ventures deeper into the slums to meet a Nigerian gang led by Obasanjo. Obsessed with alien biology, Obasanjo bizarrely believes that eating alien body parts will allow humans to use alien weapons. The moment he sees Wikus's mutated arm, he orders his men to cut it off. Just as Obasanjo's men prepare to chop off his arm, Wikus instinctively grabs one of the alien weapons lying nearby. The weapon suddenly powers up. Panicked and desperate, he pulls the trigger, unleashing a blast that sends one of Obasanjo's men flying. Wikus fires again, vaporizing another attacker in a single explosive shot. With the alien gun aimed directly at Obasanjo, Wikus forces him to give exactly what he wants. Not long after, Wikus and Christopher launch a raid on the MNU headquarters to retrieve the fuel. What begins as a covert mission quickly spirals into full-scale chaos. Armed with devastating alien weaponry, Wikus tears through armed mercenaries as explosions and gunfire erupt across the facility. Meanwhile, deep inside the laboratories, Wikus finally manages to recover the fuel. But just as they prepare to escape, Christopher stumbles upon a horrifying discovery: the mutilated body of his friend Paul, lying among the countless alien test subjects. For a moment, the shocking sight nearly breaks him. Grief and rage overwhelm Christopher as he realizes the true horrors hidden within the facility. But with no time to mourn, he forces himself back into focus and quickly devises an escape plan with Wikus. Using scraps of metal scattered around the lab, Christopher constructs a makeshift bomb and detonates it, blasting open a path straight into the garage below. They hijack a vehicle and race out of the facility. In a narrow and chaotic escape, the pair manages to outrun the pursuing forces and finally make their way back to District 9, with the fuel safely in their hands. They quickly return to Christopher's shack and prepare the dropship for launch. But just as hope seems close, Christopher reveals devastating news. He cannot cure Wikus yet. He explains that he must first return to the mothership, gather help from his people, and then come back to Earth, a journey that could take nearly 3 years. At first, Christopher only wanted to save his son and escape Earth. But after witnessing the horrific experiments inside the MNU facility, he realizes humanity will continue torturing his species unless he returns home for help. Terrified of losing his humanity forever, he attacks Christopher and steals the dropship for himself. But before he can reach the mothership, MNU forces shoot the craft out of the sky. Kubus and his mercenaries quickly capture both Wikus and Christopher. However, before they can leave District 9, Obasanjo's gang ambushes the convoy and kidnaps Wikus during the chaos. Back inside the Nigerian hideout, Obasanjo prepares to cut off Wikus's mutated arm, while mercenary reinforcements begin storming the area, igniting an all-out war between the two sides. At the same time, Christopher's young son secretly activates the alien mothership from the hidden dropship. Suddenly, a massive alien battle mech inside the hideout powers on and erupts into violence, slaughtering gang members within seconds. The surviving attackers desperately fire back, but their bullets freeze in midair before being hurled back at them, killing the remaining gang members instantly. Then, with one final missile strike, Obasanjo is completely obliterated. Meanwhile, Christopher's son continues operating the mothership, and slowly, the massive alien vessel begins moving across the sky. The mercenaries immediately notice it and realize Christopher must know what's happening. They drag him out of the vehicle and violently interrogate him for answers. At the same time, the battle mech suddenly recognizes Wickes because of the alien DNA in his body. The machine powers down, opens for him, and allows him inside. Seizing the opportunity, Wickes escapes in the mech and attempts to flee the area. But despite everything he has suffered, Wickes finally makes a selfless choice. The moment he overhears Kubus planning to execute Christopher, he abandons his own escape and turns back to save him. The selfish bureaucrat who once treated aliens like garbage is now willing to sacrifice himself for them. Without hesitation, Wickes charges back into the battlefield, opening fire on the mercenaries and rescuing Christopher. Together, they fight side by side against overwhelming enemy forces while desperately trying to reach the dropship. However, as the battle intensifies, the mech begins taking heavy damage from relentless gunfire. Realizing only one of them can escape, Wickes chooses to stay behind and hold off the mercenaries alone. Before leaving, Christopher promises that he will return in 3 years and cure him. Moments later, Wickes rises for one final stand. He forces himself back up and continues fighting, tearing through the remaining mercenaries with the damaged mech. Meanwhile, Christopher finally reaches the dropship just as a massive tractor beam descends from the mothership, slowly lifting the craft into the sky. Back on the ground, Wickes makes his final stand against Kubus Venter. He is about to shoot him when a speeding car suddenly crashes into him. With the battle mech already crippled, Wickes is left helpless as he watches the dropship slowly rise toward the mothership while his body continues transforming into an alien creature. Soon, mercenaries surround him from every direction and open fire. Despite his injuries, Wickes continues fighting back until the damaged mech is finally destroyed. But just as Kubus prepares to execute him, a swarm of nearby prawns suddenly attacks the mercenary and brutally tears him apart. In the aftermath, MNU's illegal experiments are exposed to the world, causing massive outrage. The surviving aliens are relocated to the larger camp known as District 10, where their numbers continue to grow. But Wickes completely disappears. The film's final moments are quiet and heartbreaking. Tanya discovers a small handcrafted metal flower left outside her home, identical to the ones Wickes used to make for her. The truth is then revealed. Wickes, now fully transformed into a prawn, is hiding alone in a scrapyard, silently crafting metal flowers while waiting for Christopher's promised return.